This Thursday is the fast of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av commemorates 5 tragic events in our history. The first is when we were in the desert, about to enter into Eretz Yisrael, and we sent Meraglim to check out Eretz Yisrael, and they came back on the 8th of Av with a very negative report. At least 10 of them did. Klal Yisrael believed that negative report and did not want to continue on into Eretz Yisrael. On the 9th of Av, on the night of the 9th of Av, they cried in their tents about having to go on to Eretz Yisrael. Because they accepted the words of the Meraglim, that day, from then on, became predestined to be a tragic day in the history of our history. Both Batei Mikdashos, the first and the second, were destroyed on Tisha B'Av. In addition, the rebellion of Bar Kokhba was put down on Tisha B'Av, with hundreds of thousands of Jews massacred at Beitar. And finally, the Romans plowed the Har HaBayis, so we would lose the last memory of the Beis HaMikdash. Tisha B'Av is both a tainus similar to Yom Kippur and a day of Avelus similar to a person sitting Shiva. The halachos of Tisha B'Av begin on Erev Tisha B'Av with the Suda HaMafsekes, the final meal we eat before the fast. We eat the meal as a meal of an onein, someone who lo aleinu just lost a relative. The meal consists of bread and one cooked item. Traditionally, that cooked item has been a hard-boiled egg. We sit on the floor, and many people have a minhag to put a few ashes on the bread that they eat. So it's bread, the egg, and some drinks, and then we bench. The custom is that 3 men should not eat the meal together in order to avoid having to make a zimun. Even if somebody is unable to fast in Tisha B'Av, still is supposed to have these Sudas HaMafsekes. Because it would be very difficult to enter the fast with such a sparse meal, the minhag has developed that before we eat the Sudas HaMafsekes, we eat a full meal. So we have a full meal, leaving over a little room for the Sudas HaMafsekes, and then we bench. However, you're not allowed to bench and then immediately afterwards wash again, because that would be a bracha she'eina tzricha, that would be an unnecessary bracha. So after you have your first meal, you're supposed to take a break and only then have the second meal. The best way to do it would be to have the first meal, then we go to shul, daven mincha, come back and have the Sudas HaMafsekes. If somebody comes home from work and does not have time to eat both meals, then they will be forced to just have the Sudas HaMafsekes. They would eat bread, a cooked item, it doesn't have to be an egg, and they could eat as many uncooked items like vegetables that they want as part of the meal. However, they would be restricted from eating a second cooked item. If you're only having one meal, that would be forbidden. As we get close to Tisha B'Av, the sadness of Tisha B'Av begins. For that reason, there's a minhag that Erev Tisha B'Av, already from Chatzos, around 1 p.m., one is not supposed to learn Torah, because learning Torah brings us simcha. That means if somebody has time to learn, preferably they should learn something which relates to Tisha B'Av, like the Gemaras, which deal with the Chorban HaBayis, or the Halachos of Tisha B'Av. However, if somebody feels that I'm just not able to learn that, and they're not going to learn at all, so the poskim say it would be better to learn the regular Gemara or whatever item that you're learning over wasting time and doing nothing. Certainly, if one is forbidden to learn, one realizes that Erev Tisha B'Av is not the time for a trip or something enjoyable. The halachos of Tisha B'Av, there are 5 main halachos. The first is it's forbidden to eat and drink. Tisha B'Av, like Yom Kippur, already begins from Shkia on Wednesday afternoon and goes till Tzeis HaKochavim on Thursday evening. On Tisha B'Av, one is not supposed to brush their teeth or rinse out their mouth. The Mishnah Berurah says if somebody is in real tsar, if they're not able to do that, it would be permitted. However, they have to make sure that they don't swallow any of the liquid. In contrast to the other fasts, a pregnant or nursing women are supposed to fast on Tisha B'Av. So they should try their best to fast. However, if they are feeling weak or sick, they are allowed to break their fast. It's a little different than Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, if you have to break your fast, you're still supposed to keep to the shiurim. On Tisha B'Av, if you do have to break your fast, it's not necessary to eat less than the shiur. In addition, someone who is sick is not required to fast at Tisha B'Av at all, and again, they're not required to keep to the shiur. If somebody is really feeling well, but the doctor is nervous that by fasting it may affect their pregnancy or they may become sick, they should speak to a Rav about how to navigate the Tisha B'Av. A woman who has given birth within 30 days does not have to fast on Tisha B'Av. Children under the age of bar bas mitzvah are not required to fast on Tisha B'Av. There is no chinuch to have them fast a little bit. The second prohibition of Tisha B'Av is the prohibition of rechitza, of washing. You're not allowed to wash any body part in water, even in cold water. However, if some part of you got dirty, you are allowed to do what's necessary to wash off the dirt. In addition, if somebody's cooking food and they have to wash the food while they're cooking it, at the same time their hand is going to get wet, that would be okay. If somebody went to the bathroom, the best thing to do would be to use your hands to touch a part of you that's generally covered, and that way you'll be allowed to wash your hands. In the morning we wash negavasa 3 times. However, we only wash to the end of our knuckles. We don't wash the entire hand. This year, when we're careful to disinfect our hands, Rabbi Schechter says that somebody who is being careful the last couple of weeks to be washing their hands or using with soap or using disinfectant would be allowed to do it in Tisha B'Av. Probably the best thing to do is if you have a disinfectant wipe, and some of them are made to clean their hands, to use that, as that does not contain very much liquid. The next prohibition is the prohibition of sicha. You're not allowed to use any oils or creams or cosmetics on you. However, the prohibition of sicha is only prohibited if it's being done for tainuk, if it's being done for enjoyment. If it's being done for medicinal purposes, that's okay. So any medicine that has to be smeared on you would be okay. If somebody has very chapped lips would be allowed to use something for medicine. In addition, if it's just being used to take away a negative smell, that would be okay, and therefore it is permitted to wear deodorant on Tisha B'Av. The next prohibition is the prohibition of leather shoes. We do not wear any leather shoes on Tisha B'Av. This prohibition applies to children also. We should make sure our children do not have leather shoes. And the fifth prohibition is the prohibition of tashmish hamita, of relations. Relations are forbidden on Tisha B'Av. The Shulchan Aruch says on the night of Tisha B'Av, there should not even be any contact between a husband and wife. However, the other halachos, which do not involve contact, would be permitted on Tisha B'Av. On Tisha B'Av, there's also a prohibition of shelas shalom. You're not allowed to greet somebody. You're not allowed to say hello, good morning, good night. However, if somebody greets you, if it would be not seen as not nice not to greet them back, you could mumble a greeting back. The best thing would be to explain to them that it's Tisha B'Av and it's forbidden to greeting. You are allowed to nod or wave. There is an issa to learn Torah on Tisha B'Av, as Torah brings a simcha, and that is, however, learning about something which relates to Tisha B'Av, like the Gemaras which relate to the Churban Abayis, the Halachos of Tisha B'Av, or learning Sifrei Musar are permitted on Tisha B'Av. Certainly, if one is not allowed to learn, one should not be spending their time gaming or just surfing the internet. It should really be a day focused on the Churban. There are so many videos and shiurim available right now that one could really spend their whole day on being inspired about learning about the Beis HaMikdash. Another minig is until chatzos, until 1 p.m., we do not sit on a chair on Tisha B'Av. You can sit on the floor. You can also put something on the floor like a low bench, generally under 10 inches big. Under 10 inches, and that would be okay. If this is difficult for somebody's not feeling well, or a pregnant woman, then they would be allowed to sit on a regular chair. You are, of course, allowed to sit in a car you're allowed to lie down in your bed on Tisha B'Av. There is a minhag to try minimize somewhat the comfort of sleeping on a bed. It says in Shulchan Aruch, if you normally sleep with 2 pillows in Tisha B'Av, you should take away 1 and only sleep with 1. Another minhag is not to do work on Tisha B'Av. Work, and this minhag also goes until Chatzos, until about 1 p.m. Work means whether going to work or even being involved in housework. Any type of work that you're involved in, that's not just momentarily, it would be forbidden on Tisha B'Av until Chatzos. After Chatzos, work is permitted. However, the Shulchan Aruch says that if one does work after Chatzos, eino roa siman bracha. He's not going to see a bracha out of that work. Because really, Tisha B'Av should be a day which we spend entirely in Avelis and don't do something which distracts us about thinking about the Chorban and thinking about the Avelis of the day. There is no prohibition of asking a guy to do work. So even in the morning, a guy can be doing housework or any employees can be doing work for you. One final minhag is that we do not wear talis and tefillin in the morning of Tisha B'Av, but that is put on in the afternoon during Mincha. In the tefillos of Tisha B'Av, we add in on Mincha 2 tefillos in the Shmona Esrei. One is the tefillah of Nachem, which is added in the bracha of Bonei Yerushalayim. If you forgot it in the Bonei Yerushalayim, you can still say it after Ritzei. The second tefillah is the tefillah of Anenu, which is added in after Shema Kolenu. Both of those tefillahs, if you forgot them, you do not repeat the Shmona Esrei. If one is not fasting, he still says Nachem. Actually, if one is not fasting and eating bread, would actually add Nachem in the benching. But one does not say Anenu if one is not fasting on Tisha B'Av. There is no Avinu Malkeinu said during Tisha B'Av. On Motzi Tisha B'Av, after Ma'ariv, we say Kiddush Levana. Kiddush Levana, the Gemara tells us, is a Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. By seeing the new moon and seeing what Hashem has created in nature, we have a deeper recognition and appreciation of what Hashem does. And it's considered to be a Kabbalas Pnei Shechina. It's hopefully a fitting end to Tisha B'Av. After we've spent the day being misabel about the lack of Shechina in the world, hopefully we can now feel a closer connection to the Shechina, properly Mekabel Pnei Shechina in Motzei Tisha B'Av, and be zocher this year to be Mekabel Pnei Shechina, all of us in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim.